everybody. Thank you, Anna and team, for allowing me to come and speak to you today. I hope I can impart some wisdom in my 25 years of working in technology and in the industry. And I'm really looking forward to questions, and I'll do my best to answer them with as much empathy and diversity and transparency as I can. So first thing, I just wanted to give a little intro. As we talked about, right now I've had quite a career. I am an engineer by training in computer science. I've always loved what I do. I've been very fortunate about that. I've kept up my technical skills along the way, as I've really been quite purposeful in learning more and more about different business units, and made my way around the technology landscape to sort of bring that value to my business units. In that, it's been a long journey. I'm probably much older than maybe some of you on the call, and maybe similar to those of you who are also on the call. Where I grew up in technology and the industry, was very different than sort of what's happening today. And I hope that I played a part in allowing for different and, quite frankly, hopefully a better space for those of all of you to work in the industry today. But a lot of who I am and what I'm about to say today is based on my own experience. We all have our own experiences. They don't mean that they're right or wrong, but it's what's great about them is we can all learn from each other's experience. And so I'm hoping to do that with you today. So today I wanted to talk to you about three things: diversity, empathy, and balance. All very big, important aspects to how I like to manage my life and sort of run my organization. And most importantly, the organizations I choose to work for. Having all of these particular items, I think, helps you round out your role as an individual and a colleague and a team player and a leader, most importantly. I'm hoping that what we can talk about, is probably, based on research and facts that are founded in many, many studies that now exist around women in technology and the impact diversity has amongst our community. And most importantly, the outcomes that have happened in the business units. In fact, we can tie very closely those groups of organizations who have higher performance, and the fact that their diversity mix is a direct correlation to that improvement. So let's start there. Let's start with diversity. The first thing I would say for all of us is, those of us who find ourselves in a member of a diverse community, I think, and that's how I think about it, is our obligation to bring forward and represent more and more diversity when we get into positions for which we can influence those opportunities. And so I really take that quite seriously, ensuring that, the tables that I sit in, they represent diverse communities. But most importantly, I'm a big believer in sort of reaching back and pulling forward people who can sit at that table when they don't think they can. I think that's one of the things I would say for those of us. Number one, all humans are insecure, like we all are, even the most assertive people that you meet. I will tell you confidently that everyone has a self-concern. And so knowing that probably would be helpful to understand that everybody has an insecurity. And anytime that you feel a member of a community and feel that level of inclusion, I know that reduces that anxiety and actually makes you feel more safe to kind of participate. And that's what's most interesting. The more you participate and provide your voice to the conversation, which comes along with your expertise, that's the value that you're going to actually showcase. And that's what the organization is going to see. And so I think a lot of times, because of that insecurity, wherever it comes from, it keeps us back from participating, whether it's in a conversation, whether it's a member of our team member, it's a contribution. And that's what's interesting. The less you contribute, the less value you bring to the dialogue, the less value you bring to the organization, and then people don't see the value. And so people wonder sometimes, why am I not getting ahead, or why am I not getting those opportunities? You have to participate. And so you have to do whatever you can to overcome those levels of insecurity, whether or not speaking about that, getting help, finding a friend on the team. And I will tell you, no matter how high or what level or role that you have, those remain. So part of that mission of mine is to go reach back, and I started a program. For those of you who don't know, I am Canadian. And so I graduated from the University of Waterloo, which is a very large and reputable computer science school there and university. And I created a program with that organization. It was called Think About Math. And the intention there was really to reach out to young girls who were just about to graduate high school and bring them together so they can feel a community and really talk about it's okay to love math. It's okay to be good at what you do. I really believe that we have to start very early in life to help people feel and understand that while they may not be part of a community wherever they are, there is a community for them somewhere. And what our job is to find that community. And the program is still running. It's over a decade old, and super proud to see that has really helped the number of women in the STEM community and the STEM organizations, because that's our challenge. Our challenge is, even as I sit here today, I want to hire more diverse people, but unless they're graduating from STEM, it's going to be more and more difficult. So we do need to feed that pipeline of individuals who are interested in this industry. And so I have been spending a lot of my time there, but I also do a lot of mentoring and challenging. So that's really the significance of diversity. The other comments I would talk to you about diversity, as I mentioned to you, there's organizations like Catalyst who are out there, and they actually do scientific research to attribute, how diversity is playing a role in the company's success. And so there are a lot of facts out there, if you're a fact-driven person like myself, for you to look at that. And I would tell you that most of the companies that I've ever worked for, they are serious about diversity. There is a lot of intentionality around making sure diversity is actually present on all levels of the organization. What we need to do is just embrace that. But most importantly, for those of us who are in a particular powerful, like in a particular power position, whether it's in a meeting and you're the leader of that particular meeting, make sure you create a safe space for people to speak to. That's really your job as the moderator of the meeting. Your job as the moderator of the meeting should be to talk less and facilitate more. And facilitation means bringing people's voices out. So these are some really tangible things you can do. If you fall prey to things that, let's say, I've heard many women talk about it being over talked, or quite frankly, someone taking your comment that really you should attribute it, help a friend out. So, if you see that happening, step in and go, hey, I actually think Brenda actually said that, 5 minutes ago. So always find partners or buddies to kind of help one another in those types of conversations where you can. Many people, sometimes when I speak to them, they feel lonely. They feel like, someone else going through this with me. And again, the more you can find a confidant at work and or outside of work where I'm experiencing this thing, do you have any ideas on how I can handle it and manage it? There are many, many people who would offer up very tactical suggestions that have been relayed over to myself as well. So you can see some of those tactics I've deployed. Find a buddy in a meeting, talk less, make sure there's inclusion in terms of space, attribute and give value to people who've actually mentioned the conversation, bring people into the dialogue. So these are all various ways in which we can actually ensure there's not only diversity at the table, and I actually think the word inclusion is much more important, because without inclusion, there really can't be a participative level in terms of diversity in the conversation. So now I want to move on to empathy. Empathy is an interesting thing. For those of you who love Simon Sinek, empathy is being concerned about a human being, not just their output. I've recently attended a conversation with Joyce Fitzgerald, and I think what she said, and I think this is her quote, I might get it not exactly correct, but it really resonated with me. Most of us, at least when I grew up with the notion of the edict that said, if you work hard, you're going to get where you want to do. Like work hard, be smart, go to school, learn everything you can. And so I think a lot of us grow up with this notion of, I just have to work hard and then I'll get ahead. And that is true. Like that's a foundation to any role that you're going to actually be in. But what's missing from that conversation is the other sentence. The other sentence is, and you'll hear it a lot, people talk about networking, right? But what this is really about is relationships, right? And you can't build relationships unless you have empathy for the people around you. If you don't work on relationships through an empathetic lens, you will only get so far. You might, in fact, find yourselves stuck. You're like, I work harder than everybody else. I know my stuff more. But if nobody knows you, that's not going to be helpful for you. right? What's interesting to recognize is people in the organization need to know you. They need to know your name. They need to know how you contribute, and they need to know you on a personal level. And what's great about having personal relationships is when people know me, they know who I am, they know what I do outside of work, and I have more of a personal conversation or relationship with them. If I have to approach that particular individual to have, let's say, a difficult conversation, they'll be a lot more empathetic to me to say, listen, I know Judy, she wouldn't bring an issue if she didn't think, it was an important issue. And I know that, she's not she's not in it for her, she's in it for the company. So along that conversation comes those biases that person has. If they don't know you and you have to have these types of dialogues and conversation, it makes it harder. The other thing to remember is if you're looking for promotions, and who is not, everyone always is, I need to remind everybody that no one gets a promotion if no one knows who you are. And if your manager is the only person who knows you, you're not going to get that far, because the manager needs help. No one person can get promoted. It's actually a team conversation. It's always a team agreement. Managers will reach out to your peer group and go, what's it like to work with Judy? What do you think of Judy? So people ask about it. And if the answer back is, well, I don't really know Judy, it makes it very, very difficult for one person to be your only champion and your only sponsor. And so while this topic in this area is called empathy, it's called empathy. I should have probably called it, how to build relationships and the importance of relationships. But empathy is how you build relationships. Empathy is understanding what is going on in that person's life, right? Are they having a hard time? Is one of their family members ill? Are their kids going into school? Are they having a baby? This notion of building relationships can only happen if you take an empathetic lens to someone else's life and take interest in their life outside of work. And so do simple things like this. When you start a conversation, always start the conversation, regardless of how much work is on your plate or how serious the topic is. Always start the conversation with a little get to know you, or remember, hey, ask about them. How's your son doing? I remember last time you mentioned he was, going into his first baseball game. So always start these dialogues with empathy and ask the person how they're doing, and or remember something that they told them the last time and start off with that dialogue, because then you can ease into the work conversation. And don't get stressed if that person ends up having a conversation and taking the whole 20 minutes talking about themselves or their family or an issue that they're going through personally, when you have 30 minutes of work to get done. Because your job to build that relationship is equally as important as it is to get all the work on your plate done. And you will recognize and realize, the work actually gets lighter and easier in terms of getting approvals and such when people get to know you. So empathy is really, really critical, and it's actually a superpower for those of us who actually spend some time on it. And lastly, balance. I wanted to talk to you all about balance because it's almost a word I hate being asked in a question. Judy, how do you manage balance? Again, I want us to take the word balance with an empathetic lens, right? The word balance means something very different to every single person. It's not a mathematical equation where I spend a third of my time. We have to recognize that there's all spectrums of humanity. There are some people who view balance, where they work 90% of the time and they have fun 10% of the time. And they're very happy with that level of balance in their life, because that's what they need for their personality. And most importantly, that's how it works for their family. Other people need, a third. Other people need balance, 50-50, which is what the word kind of implies, doesn't it? But I think what's challenging for everyone to realize is, again, this notion of judgment, right? You have to be empathetic to say there's no judgment here, to say whatever someone's balance is should be their definition of balance. Sorry, I'm getting pinged here. Sorry, my apologies. So that's the first thing I would say about the word balance. You have to really define it for you. I would also recognize over my lifetime, if you will, your balance equation changes over time. For those of you who are fresh out of school, those of you who are entering into sort of, your family, then your children are growing up, then your children leave the nest, and then, you find yourself here. And so your ability to balance and the amount of time you have to devote to different things in your life will change over time. It's not a constant. And what you're trying to look for is an organization that will, flex with you. I will tell you this, that just because you don't spend this much amount of time at work, again, will not preclude you, from promotions and things in the workforce. There's not a one-to-one relationship there. It goes back again to, are you good at what you do, and are you working hard, and are you constantly learning? And remember, are you building those relationships? So, because it's really those relationships, again, that you lean on when you encounter a particular situation in your life where you actually need to spend a little more time, maybe outside of work, that you're going to have to lean on in the future. So you see how important, again, building those relationships are when it comes to sort of achieving the life of balance that you're looking for. And again, I would encourage people to be very transparent with their managers. People who, again, share a little bit of their life with their managers, say, this is what's happening right now. I would tell you, I have yet to find a manager who said, well, that's nice, I still expect you in the office like 10 times, 10 hours a day. If that happens, and I'm sure it does happen, because not all of us are good managers, I would say to you, there's an example where that might be an opportunity for your particular stage in life that, you need to change managers or roles to compensate for what you're going through at the time. I would say be courageous enough to kind of have those conversations, and be courageous enough that, sometimes you need to move in order to accommodate where you are in life. But it does not mean your outcome will not be the same, meaning you can still strive for your dream role, your dream job. Your journeys will just look very, very different. So I will tell you, probably over a decade, 2 decades ago, maybe now, I was really out of balance, if you will, for my own personal thing. And so I really took it upon myself to start to find some passion. And so, I've taken time to actually be a nutritionist, a yoga teacher, a meditation. These are things that I personally love to do in terms of finding that passion. And what's interesting about those things is when you go do something you like to do, even if it's an hour a day, it's unbelievable how you reset your mind and how you approach work with a different context. Because when you're in it and the intensity increases, I don't think you bring a lot of objectivity to the potential problem set. And so it's actually very valuable to kind of to take those passions in those times and come back to work on a fresh note. The other thing I would tell you, early in my life, I never took vacation. Even when I went on vacation, I would still be engaged. And I've learned the hard way that disconnecting from work is extremely important to our mental health. Because again, you'd be amazed at how always being in the conversation, you somehow get lost in that conversation. Taking the time and being refreshed, you come back to the problem set and the conversation with a renewed sense of energy. So I highly, highly encourage you all, number one, to take vacation, but number two, to really purposely disconnect. It will be, your behavior changes as a result of that. So I witness it all the time with my employees, and I take it upon myself to force them off their computers when they're on vacation, because I know how important that is in terms of our mental health going forward. So the key takeaways, and I'm going to now bring it open to the conversation, is number one, help diversity, participate in inclusion. Diversity is here. It's very, very important to be successful. And the more inclusive we can create our spaces and our communities, we are better for it as human beings and colleagues. Remember to build relationships, and the best way to build relationships is to be empathetic and try to seek to understand what's going on in people's lives and to build those connections with people. And balance, remember, balance is your definition and it will change over time. And lean into ensuring that you're aware of yourself. You have self-awareness as to know when you need a break and when you don't need a break, and when you need a little more fun in your life, and when you don't need to take work so seriously. Balance brings you to be a more effective worker, and I've witnessed it. And I think with all those lessons and those conversations, I think you'll actually enjoy being a colleague, and, you'll have great success. But most importantly, hopefully that leads to a little more happiness in your life, and that you come to work with a big passion to participate. So that is it. I'm going to open it up for questions now.